Ethan, amigo, how goes it? Cool. Thanks for sending this stuff. I just realized I didn't get your Google Drive files for Egotistical, and I just sent you an email about that. So we may not get to that this week because chances are pretty good that I'm going to end up rambling for a very long time just about these two compositions. um, but anyways, initial thoughts on Egotistical. I thought it was good, man. I was impressed with your rapping, and I was impressed with your background vocals. Things were in tune. Things were like confident and phrased well, and good rhythm and good vibe, and like I was impressed with the vocal stuff you got going on, which is great because I'm usually not impressed with vocal stuff. I think there's a lot of room to grow and progress and find yourself vocally, but initially for being an 18-year-old dude or whatever you are these days, it's impressive, man. So keep going with that. And like I've said before, if you can bring some confident vocal stuff to the table along with your drumming and production and everything else, you will just be a force to be reckoned with. So good on you. That's great. Other little thoughts on that? Again, once I get the files, I can dive in a little deeper. It's a long composition, and I'm sure you're aware of that. I like long things. I have patience, but I think, it basically being a hip hop sort of thing, you're probably going to lose your audience within the first 10 seconds because they just don't have the patience for it. Like you had that cool intro where you were layering sounds and stuff, but that audience, they're just not even going to give you the time of day, unfortunately. And so it's always a little bit of a question, like, are you trying to please yourself or are you trying to please your potential audience? And it's like, I think there's just basically a balance there and some sort of middle ground. But yeah, I mean, if it were me, I would probably get straight to the point with that composition, just being the style that it is. If this was more of an ethereal, jammy, soundscapey sort of track, and then the people that are listening to that type of stuff they're game for your long intro and for your long composition. But the hip hop crowd, I just don't think they're gonna. They have a very short attention span, and they want to hear your rapping like from the get go. But anyways, I can offer more thoughts on that once I see the files. And then there's some mix, like a lot of mixings. It's basically not really mixed at this point. The vocals were too low in the mix for sure. Some of the sounds were in a frequency that was stepping on the vocals. Those need to come down, etc., etc. So, anyways, that's all I'll say about that for now. And when I can get the files, we can look a little more in depth on that one. So, groovy. We have loops here. We have samba here. Let's go samba first. So I think for today, I basically need to go through everything here with you. I did, of course, do a quick little listen, and things look pretty good. But we want to make sure that everything is like good to go before we add more things, of course. And so I think I really, at least, well, the loops is a little easier because it's so short. They're just short loops. But this guy, I think I should take the time with you now to just let's just listen to everything and make sure that everything is cool. and the things that still need tweaking, let's make sure we tweak those before adding. So let's go back to the beginning. Bring up my mixer. Let's kill the click. Let's drop this guy down a little bit. All right, what do we got? I think I want to do a quick little mix on this, but let me check out the others while we're at it. Okay, yeah, so I want to get the mix a little bit closer to being sort of a mix, because the volume of things within a mix affects things like groove and things like energy and just like where everything is sitting. So right now, this first one, as an example, the drums are not hot enough in the mix for this type of thing, and the keys are too loud, and maybe the bass is a little loud. So let's just listen to that. I mean, it's not horrible. It's ballpark, but you know, we're going for drum and bassy type thing. Basically, the drums should be pretty damn hot in the mix. And we should find you a reference track, or you find yourself a reference track. I think we kind of looked at this once before a long time ago. Basically, we need to find a professionally recorded, mixed, and mastered track that resembles the style of this track that we're working on. So for this, pretty much any drum and bass track is going to work. Ideal if we can get the file for the track and load it into Reaper so that we can get the levels the same and be able to look at things. Ideally, we're getting a WAV file because it has all of the information in it. It's not compressed like an MP3. And if we have a WAV file of that pro track and can load it in here, that's the ideal thing. Now, it definitely makes a difference, but it can be hard to find high quality WAV files of certain tracks sometimes. MP3s are really easy to find. You probably need to buy it. I know it sounds crazy. Maybe not, but you know, a lot of the free download sites are super spammy, and for me, I just don't even want to deal with them because I don't want it to fuck up my computer, and I'm much happier to go on like Amazon Music and pay $1.25 for a track or whatever it is, and just have the track. Hopefully you could find a WAV file. If not, an MP3 is fine. Hopefully a high quality MP3, and we can load it in here. The other choice, you know, which you could do, but it's sort of a pain in the ass and doesn't have as much flexibility, is you could just bounce back and forth from Reaper to either YouTube or Spotify or whatever to compare to a reference track. But it's sort of annoying to have to bounce back and forth and keep a browser open when you're trying to do shit. So it's better just to have the file. So I think I can leave it up to you, man. Just like, I don't know if you have Spotify these days, or if not, like YouTube will work, but find a drum and bass track. It can be basically anything. Is probably going to be, you know, pretty professional sounding. Find one that you like that is kind of similar to what we have going on here. which would probably be most drum and bass tracks. Of course, Photech is cool. Aphex Twin is a great place to look. These are artists. I mean, either one of those two. Aphex Twin is killer if you could, find one of his files. And just try to get yourself a reference track. Because then when I'm talking about mix and stuff, we can actually look at the reference track and hear, like, where should it be, like, are the, is the bass too hot in the mix? Well, it's kind of hard to tell. Let's listen to this reference track. Oh yeah, the bass is too hot in the mix. Or no, actually it sounds like it's a little too low in the mix. And so that's basically, even professional mix engineers, that's how they do things. They use reference tracks. A lot of times they'll use multiple reference tracks for one track that they're working on. And the idea is not to replicate the reference track. It's just to gain clarity and have some sort of focus or focal point for your mix, because otherwise you kind of don't know, and you can guess and get kind of close, but without years of experience under your belt doing this, it's probably going to be kind of messed up. So we really need a reference track. Cool. But anyways, let's get this a little bit closer. So I want to get the drums a little hotter in the mix, and instead of doing that by turning up the volume or turning down other things, well, we are going to mess with the volume, but I want to throw some compression on this for sure, and maybe some EQ while we're at it. So let's just highlight that. Let's solo that. Let's get a little EQ on there first, and we're dealing with just a stereo track, which we don't have a ton of flexibility with, but that's okay. And let's just see where we're at EQ-wise. This would be a lot easier with the reference track, because we could hear the drums on the reference track and be like, oh yeah, our drums need way more high end, and our drums are too muddy, and our drums don't have enough low end, whatever it is. But right now I'm just sort of gonna kind of guess and go off my experience, just to make a couple little tweaks to make this sound a little bit happier. Okay, I think that's cool. And so I'm just dropping the super sub low frequencies, which we can't even hear, but we don't want them in there for the drum track. I mean, literally, I'm at like 30 hertz, which is like nothing. Like, the human ear can't even really hear that. So it's just sort of, when you master this stuff, the mastering could cut that out anyways, but I usually like to dip it out in these type situations. The second band here, 400-ish range, I'm just dropping a couple dB with a really wide Q, because this is where all our mud is. And this track does sound a little bit muddy to me. Most of the time, tracks are muddy, so you can almost always assume that you got to pull some shit out of here to take out some of that mud. And then I boosted around 3 a little bit. This is the human ear frequency. Just make things a little poppier. And then I boosted 4, band 4 here, up in the real high range to get more crispiness and more air, just to brighten things up. So we're removing subs, we're removing mud, and we're brightening things up. That's basically the EQ that I had here. So that helps. Now for compression, let's use that Tokyo Dawn Labs however you pronounce this guy. Bummer. They have not updated their plugin, and that's why Reaper won't open it. Okay, all right. I'll see if I could figure that. That's a bummer. I really like that plugin. This has been an issue since Mac updated Catalina, their OS to Catalina. All the plugin, like, so if you're having issues with plugins, not being able to load them into Reaper and stuff like that, it's because of fucking Catalina, man. And it's driving all of us musicians crazy because so many plugins that we used to use, they're just having a really hard time being compatible with Mac's Catalina, which is really discouraging. But anyways, let's just use, compressor, go to all, let's use Reaper's compressor. Where are you, Reaper compressor? Not finding it there. Compressors are under Dynamics. Here we go, Recomp. Okay. So let's just, we could use a preset, maybe like an overhead preset, vintage overheads. I tend to like that. And let's see what that does. So this meter here is telling us how much it's compressing. So right now it's just compressing a little bit, not that much, which might be what we want. But let me adjust our threshold over here to compress a lot more, just to see what it sounds like, right? Get drastic, and so you can actually hear what's going on. So this is actually kind of a cool little A/B exercise here. So I'm going to duplicate that, and I'm going to delete that, and I'm going to volume match sort of by ear. Whoops. Let me lessen this. Let's even go a little more drastic. Whoops, we don't have loop on. Okay, so basically what I'm doing is I'm setting up a track with really heavy compression, and then a track with no compression, and I'm going to make them the same volume, essentially, and then we're just going to listen to the difference. So you're able to go, oh, that's what compression sounds like, because, like, we need to know what it sounds like. So compression, heavy compression versus no compression. And so we were at negative 8.5 here. So I want to listen to this one now and get this guy around negative 8.5. Going the wrong way. All right, close enough. So let's A/B. So here's no compression. Here's compression. Crazy, right? So there you go. Now you know what compression is. Basically makes things crunchy, and it takes out dynamics. It sort of flattens everything out, and it sounds like you just took your drum track and you stepped on it. This is a technique called parallel compression, where you have a heavily compressed track, and then you have the same track totally clean with no compression, and then you would blend these two together to get the sound that you want. That's actually a technique called parallel compression. So maybe we should just go with that, actually. That might be kind of cool. Let's compress it more, make it super squashed. Now, since we're losing so much volume, I think we need to bring that up using a plugin. Volume adjustment, JS volume adjustment. Instead of this fader, let's put that fader back on 0. And now let's use this plugin to bring the volume back up. Now, I know that the master over here is all wonky, right? Because I turned this up so I can hear it, which of course we wouldn't do, but anyways. Okay, so let's blend these two together to get a drum sound that's more present and more cutting in the mix. So maybe what I'll do is start with the clean one, and bring the compressed all the way down, and then start to bring the compressed up to a point that I think sounds good. Maybe something like that. Groovy. While we're at it, let's put a little saturation on this guy. I think you've seen this before. Soft Tube saturation knob. This is a free plugin by Soft Tube. It's really simple and it sounds good. And always takes a second to load. There it is. You can go to their website, Softtube, and grab this saturation knob plugin. It's free. It's super simple and works great. So let's just make sure we put that right after our compression before the volume adjustment. And we may need to change our volume adjustment once we mess with this. I'm actually not hearing that much, probably because it's so compressed. Maybe we should put it over here, see what that does. There you go. Now you're hearing the saturation. So it sounds sort of like distortion, right? It adds like a bunch of different harmonics to the frequencies and just makes for this. It's almost a little compressed in a way sounding, but it kind of just helps things cut in the mix and gives things a little more texture. So usually compression and saturation. Well, I don't know about usually, but it's very common to use both of those for a lot of things instead of just one or the other. You know what we should do? Let's duplicate this again. And let's get rid of it here. So now we have clean, saturation track, heavily compressed track. And now we can parallel mix all three of these. So we'll make this one super saturated. That sounds so cool. All right. So now let's go back to this guy. Sounds so innocent now, doesn't it? And let's bring in our compressed, and then let's bring in some saturation. Okay, so this is just sort of a rough example. We don't need tons of that saturated track, right? Because then it just gets super nasty. And ideally, well, not ideally, but what happens is when all the instruments are in here and we start actually mixing things, like, we're going to adjust this stuff. But I think it would be cool if you set your session up like this for now, because this is pretty cool treatment, what we have going on here. I like this. We should throw some reverb on that too. So create a new track over here and throw on a reverb plugin. What have I been using lately? Obviously Reaper has reverb, their own reverb plugin, but it's not super awesome. Tone boosters. Reverb 3? Is that what I've been using? No, I have not been using this, but this looks pretty cool. Let me try to find that one that I was using. TB? No. Sorry, I haven't been doing any production stuff lately, so I forget where things are. This guy? No. Reverb. All plugins. Tal. That's what I wanted. Tal. Okay. Togu Audio Lines is Tal. The Tal Reverb 4 plugin. Tal makes a ton of plugins. A lot of them are really great. So this is the one I've been using lately. It sounds really, well, it sounds good. It's not as good as the old one I was using, but the old one I was using is not compatible with Catalina. Woohoo! So you're kind of screwed. All right, so if you want to get this, it's a free one, and it sounds pretty good. Just go to this website and find the Reverb 4 plugin. Cool. Pretty simple, and it sounds good. So, okay, so why, let's get rid of that. Why did I create another track over here? Because we want control over our reverb. We don't want to just throw the reverb on the drum track, because then what if we want to EQ the reverb, which we always want to do? Well, you can't really. So you have to route your drum tracks over to a dedicated reverb track for the drums. So that's what we're doing here. What you have to do is go into this routing here, click on that, and then you're adding a new receive. And let's see. Actually, before we do that, this is what we should do. Let's set up, let's call this drum bus reverb. And then let's create another track for an actual drum bus. Drag it up here, click on that guy, click that, get it set up like that. Let's make all these the same color. And let's call this drum bus. And then go back to my mixer, and then come back to this routing, add a new receive. We want to receive from the drum bus. Okay, bingo. Now your drum bus is collecting these 3 tracks and sending all that shit over to this reverb track, and then all that shit's going back to your master, basically. So that's the idea. So let's find some reverb that works with this. Sorry, just getting my ducks in a row here. Okay, so crazy reverb tail. So with drums, you usually don't want a huge reverb. Like this is enormous. It just eats up so much space and creates mud and nasty stuff. So we just want a little bit of presence. So maybe like drum ambience could actually sound really good. So that sounds pretty good. It's fairly subtle, which we kind of want. Let me make it more drastic just so we can hear what it sounds like when it's crazy. So sometimes what I'll do is I'll make it super wet, super reverby, so I can hear the reverb better, and then I'll adjust the actual length of the reverb, the size and stuff, and then I'll bring the reverb back down. Okay, so now you can hear what's going on, and we have a fairly short reverb going on, which is kind of in the ballpark. Obviously, there's way too much of it, but that's just because we're cranking it so that we can hear what's going on. So let's just dial that in a little bit more, and we'll move on. something like that. I think the saturation's a little bit too much for me. Yeah, okay, something like that. All right, so I spent a lot of time on this. But anyways, this should get us to something that sounds a little bit more like a mix, and now we can go through and make sure everything's cool. Yeah, so that's already like way better, right? I'm so excited. That's so much better. It's like now the drums are actually maybe a little hot, but at this point we could just bring the volume down a little bit or bring the others up. Yeah, wow, cool. That drum track sounds great now. All right, so I think the bass is cool. The keys, I think the placement of the notes is basically cool, but to my ears, they're dragging too much. So I'm assuming you probably moved those like we've talked about, but I think it's too much. Especially like, what if we compare that to the click track? Yeah, I see. It's crazy, right? And the click with the drums is fairly lined up, I think. Yeah, so your click and your drums are lined up. So the keys in the click, like the keys are barely keeping up with it. They're super behind the beat. So I think it's just a little too much. When it comes to like sliding things left and right, you know, it can be easy to do too much. So let's see if we can drag those a little bit back to the left. Grab those. I guess actually probably what I would do is just, this is a little bit easier when you actually have wave forms in a way, as opposed to MIDI, which we have here. But I don't want to go to waveforms yet because we want the MIDI in case we want to make more adjustments. So I think what I'll do for now is just let's see, yeah, just split that there so we have some space to drag, and then highlight both of those. Let me check this seam here real quick. Uh-oh, Ethan. Oh no. That should be on the grid. It's very close, but it's not. The bass is okay because that's just bass. Let's fix that. We need all this stuff to be on the grid. Turn my snap off. Split that. Snap on. Drag that over. Drums. Click here, highlight those, split, get rid of those, drag those, snap. Okay. Now we have everything lined up on the grid. Hopefully that still sounds cool. Yeah, okay, it's cool. All right, so back to shifting these, highlight that, back here, and let's just, well, let's put a marker where he started so we know. Okay. And maybe drag, snap off, drag back, I don't know, a little bit. Yeah, maybe a little bit more, just to see. I don't know. It's all right. Let's dive in here a little bit. This is early. This is early. These notes are too long. These notes are too long. These notes are too long. So note length, right? I don't know if you're hearing this, but I think you will, since I'm pointing these things out. I know it seems small, but it's like my ear hears it and goes, that's not right. Note length. I mean, you could visually kind of just see, like this is, I mean, for all of the notes, this is probably about the note length we'd want. Anything that's longer, you can almost just assume that it's going to be long. It doesn't have to be perfect. We don't want it to be perfect. We want them all to be sound like a human actually played them, but they need to be, pretty close. This sounded a little early, I thought. Those look a little long as well. Okay, so it's close, but if you would go in, tweak your note length, and spend a little more time thinking about placement of things, I think as far as behind or ahead, where we moved this is probably pretty close. It was definitely way too far behind before. Okay, I have to move on because I'm taking forever here. And I have to plug in my computer because I'm running out of battery. Okay, let's check out the next one. on. I thought I saw something here. We got to check your seams again. So is this the one that we fixed? I think so. That looks close. What's going on over here? What's this mess, Ethan? What is all this mess here? These are not on the grid. Oh no. Can I assume that we can just do this? All right. And then do this. Can we do that? I don't know why there's a split here, but do we hear it? It's okay. No biggie. What's going on here? Hey, that one looks good. Cool. What's going on here? I'm just checking all your seams. This one's weird. This is normal for now. I'm not sure what's going on here. Can these just go like that? Should be able to, right? How did that affect this seam? The more you do this, the more you'll just learn how to keep things clean and tidy as you go. It just makes your life easier. When I first started doing this stuff, man, my shit was a mess. So no worries. We'll do the best we can. So when I shifted those, I should have made sure I had everything highlighted, so I'm not shifting just one thing and messing everything up. So like that. And now we'll check over here. And of course that's a little messed up. Is this the same thing? I love this drum track. What's going on? Things are a little wonky. Jeez. Okay, so spend some time cleaning this stuff up because like we're like not even halfway through this composition yet, and if this stuff is not lining up where it needs to line up, you're just making your life really difficult. So however much time it takes to go through here and clean this stuff up, that's what you got to do. So let's see. If I grab that, now I grab everything. I need to split these as well in the same spot. Now I grab, that's okay, everything here. Snap, snap to there. I grab those and snap them to here. Every time we're doing this, we're fucking algorithmically with the sound a little bit, which isn't really an issue for this, but you know, if you were working on a really complicated track and doing this for someone else and like maybe they were paying you, like you wouldn't want to mess with it that much. Okay, so that's cool. What do we have going on here? More issues. So grab that and that and snap that over. Grab these, snap that over. Check this seam. Ah, that seam worked out that time. And then check the end. Okay. I'm not sure why we have this here. Okay, that's all right. Okay, so we're cleaned up. Let's go back to this guy. Cool, nice work. That sounds good. I would say the only thing I'm hearing a little bit is maybe the bass is a little too ahead of the beat. Just a pinch. I would kind of want to hear that as being put in a marker so we know where we were. And then just let's move it to the right a little bit so it's dragging a little bit more. Yeah, I dig that. Maybe it's a pinch too much. Something like that. Okay, cool. The keys sound great. That's working. Let's move on. Gonna bring the keys up just a little bit there so I can hear them better. Okay, so pretty good. I think this first section here sounded really good. This one was a little bit wonkier. Maybe go in and spend a little bit more time on this one. It's really close, but I heard a few places that were not quite dialed. I think it was mostly placement. Just certain notes were either a little rushed or dragged, and maybe the note length wasn't quite right. But this one sounded really good. So maybe you spent more time on this, and by the time you got to this, you were over it. So spend more time on this, and we'll be happy. Bass sounds good. It's cool. This is good, actually, because I remember this from last week sounded pretty sloppy. I wasn't super convinced that this keyboard part would work all that well, but I think it does. Just make this one sound, whoops, sound a little bit more like this one, just groove-wise. Next. Okay, so it's too draggy for me. It's possible that when I was up here realigning things that didn't get aligned. That is possible, but whatever the case, this is, it's a little too draggy for my taste. So if we just move it ahead a little bit. Still too draggy. Maybe still too draggy. Now it's maybe a little bit rushed. You may need to find that general spot, and then you might have to get, some of these were working well with that. Some of them now sounded a little bit rushy. So maybe slide the placement that you want and then go in and tweak the ones that are either a little rushy or draggy, but that's closer. Okay, cool. So, I'm going crazy. We're almost at an hour here. Typical of me to ramble about this stuff. Get your session, this Samba session, like this. Make sure everything's on the grid. Get it all cleaned up. I know that's like the housekeeping, doing the dishes, boring shit. But you're going to make both of our lives so much easier if this is all clean and tidy before we do anything else. And then get your drum bus and all the drum stuff kind of rough mixed like that. That sounds much better. And more tweaks to the keys and the bass, or I guess the bass was all good, wasn't it? Maybe there was one tweak on this guy. I forget. Anyways, do all that shit, and I thank you for that. Let's move on to loops. Cool. It's just doing a little mix on your drums to get that closer. I think this is working. I think the bass is cool. And I think it's working with both the original groove and the samples groove. Let's check out the next one. Medium density original groove with medium density bass. Whoops, I'm adjusting the samples and we're not there yet. So I'm just sort of messing around with that. Your original groove is really lacking kick drum in the mix. So I'm like, okay, well, what if we just do that? So that is an option. Let's not worry about it now. Basically, your drum mix here is all ride cymbal bell and not enough of everything else. But that's why we created this sample stuff, so we can actually have more control over that. We won't get into that right now, though, but let me just listen for the other stuff. Cool. I like how this is sort of dragging at the end of the phrase. Actually, it doesn't sound like it's dragging when it's soloed, but when I had it with the drums, maybe because of how it's mixed, how it's mixing with the drum track, it sounds like it's dragging a little bit at the end of the phrase, which is kind of cool. Right? Dig that. Okay, with the samples. Cool, so that's all working. We'll check the third one here. Original with bass. Yeah. Cool. With samples. Cool. All right. So, nice, man. This is all sounding good. What do the seams look like? Uh-oh. That's why I was hearing weird shit. Okay, so see this big gap here between... Yeah, we can't have that. Okay, so... And assuming you have that gap at the end, too, because you copied and pasted. Yes, okay. Okay, so spend a minute cleaning this up. We need this stuff to be nice and clean so it doesn't ruin our lives. Deleting that. I'm highlighting all of this stuff, making sure I get every last little square of stuff. There's probably an easier way to just highlight everything too, and I'm not sure what that is. Okay, everything's highlighted. Now I'm going here. I have snap on. I'm just going to option snap all that to there. Now Command C and Command V. Okay, now everything's on the grid, right? Everything should be on the grid, except it's in the wrong place. No problem. We'll just drag that up there, and then it automatically created all these tracks we don't need, so we'll remove those. Okay, and check the seam. Whoops. That sounds cool, though. I dig that. Yeah, okay. So now everything's clean. Okay, so cool. So just clean up that seam. So everything's on the grid. Everything sounded good. What's next? We're either gonna probably go with a rhythm part like we did on the other one, like a keys or guitar or whatever rhythm part, chordal thing for these, and or vocals. So let me know where you're at with vocals for this, because we're going to plan to do some vocals on this. So we could either do vocals next or a keys rhythm thing next. I guess it would probably make sense to do a keys rhythm thing next, right? But it makes sense to maybe understand what your vocals are doing maybe before you write your keys rhythm thing. Right, because your vocals, maybe you're thinking about some sort of melody, some sort of melodic aspect, and that, you'll want chords that go with that, or not. It doesn't have to go that way. But I guess my point is it might be easier to sing or rap or whatever you want to do over something that has some chords on it instead of just some really nasty sounding bass tracks, which I dig. So, I guess, yeah, some sort of rhythmic chordal stuff. We continue using Helm, I suppose. That's what we had here, right? Yeah, Helm. So you just go in here and choose some chordal things. All the stuff up here was let's see, this is stuff I've used. All that stuff is bass. MT. Those must be keys. We have an organ here. Yeah. Pads. Anything that says pad, that'll work. Most of anything that's a lead probably doesn't have polyphony, so you'll just choose stuff that you can actually play chords with, and there's plenty of stuff to choose from there, and again, we'll probably end up tweaking a little bit on the interface once we get in there. Cool. So as far as density and stuff, I'll leave that up to you. But you're considering that this is that was sort of the initial exercises, like low density versus high density, and now things are getting built up, right? We have more stuff going on, so when you put in keys, you're just going to want to think about that, like how much space should I leave, or how much space should I take up with my keys. And if you were going to rap over this and you got a bunch of words and you're moving fast with your spit, then, maybe the keys shouldn't be doing all that much, for example. Anyways, okay. I think I'm done rambling for this week. This stuff is looking good. And cool, dude. All right. Well, I guess we're still virtual at the moment. The music center over in North Conway, where I was teaching, or still am, I guess, they're opening back up in a couple days, and like wearing face masks and sterilizing all the doorknobs and the drumsticks, and like you can only use the side door, and like all these restrictions and everything. And they're like, yeah, come in, you can come back and do drum lessons in person. And I'm like, yeah, I think I've got to wait a little bit longer. Something about like giving drum lessons wearing a fucking face mask, man. You can't even see facial expressions, And the video thing has been working pretty well for you and a couple other my students. So I'm just, I'm not going to rush into that. And anyways, we'll see how that goes. keep me posted on Chicago. I'm curious. What are you up to this summer, man? I'm assuming you're not going back to camp in any capacity, or maybe you are. I don't know. Anyways, all right. I'll talk to you later, dude. See ya.